Save the Semantics, episode 218. It is July 3rd, 2023. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. We're doing back-to-back days, baby. Even though this is technically going for next week's, or I guess this week's episode. And then whenever I happen to upload last week's episode, I will do that. But yeah, recording this a day after. So yeah, nothing too crazy, but I did want to talk about some things. I did want to talk about, I wanted to talk specifically, most notably, Better Call Saul. I did end up finishing it. So while it's still fresh in my memory, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about how I felt about the series as a whole, its connections to Breaking Bad, everything like that. I'll try to avoid going into super in-depth regarding spoilers and that sort of thing, but I just want to talk overall, and I want to talk about how I felt about the series ending. So that's kind of the main thing. This week is a bit of a weird week, because tomorrow is Independence Day, but I happen to work today, so it's going to be a kind of a weird sort of like holiday thing where I have tomorrow off. I did not get today off as a holiday. I had the chance to take today off, but I decided just not to. But yeah, it's kind of a weird week. But rest of the week is gonna be a shorter week, so looking forward to that. Tomorrow I don't have anything crazy planned for 4th of July. I think it's gonna be probably quiet, which is good, which means I can catch up on some things. Most Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe I'll beat it tomorrow, but I'll also get to sleep in too, which is nice. It's like I slept in this weekend for a little bit, but other than that, I've been getting up at a decent time. Like I haven't really like slept in, you know what I mean? So yeah. I'll be looking forward to that, so maybe I'll catch up on some Tears tonight. Maybe finish up some other shows that I have on my backlog since I finished up Better Call Saul. Like I said, I still have Ozark, which is, it's gonna be, it's sort of, I think with Ozark, especially the last season, with how it's going, it feels it's been difficult to get through because I've only gone through the first 4 episodes, I think, and while it is intriguing, I think that, and I may have touched upon this before, but there are some real moments throughout the show where it's like kind of this huge shock or huge revelation about a thing that happens, and I feel that some of the pacing for the early part of this season is been a bit kind of slow, you know what I mean, which is fine. Like you feel that it's going to be sort of building up to its conclusion, and we'll see how that goes, but yeah, I think it's been difficult to kind of get through because there are certain like character moments that I'm kind of like, okay, it seems kind of intriguing here and there, but it feels a bit slow to kind of develop, which is fine. It's fine. It is what it is. And I just sort of am like, I think maybe it's like I don't. It's also I think another thing is that, it's sort of funny to think about, considering its similarities to Breaking Bad, in terms of the context of the show and the sort of the position that the main characters are in. I just feel that they've really put these characters through some really inexplicable situations that I feel it's kind of like I'm struggling to see how they're gonna one up themselves because they've gotten themselves out of so much shit. Um, that it's like, okay, what's next? Like, what are they gonna? It's like, I'm hoping that they don't like jump the shark in the sense where it's like, wow, this seems a little difficult to get out of, I don't know, maybe that's sort of the point of the show, is that eventually these things are going to catch up to them, which is kind of the similar thing to like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, right? um but I don't know, it's like some of the, I think especially last season, there were some moments where I was kind of scratching my head a little bit. It was good. I thought it was a pretty well done season overall, but some moments were like, okay, really? Like, that seems a little, it's a show, whatever. It just seemed there's too many. There's a lot of plot holes. I think there's some moments where like, okay, but this could have gone wrong. This could have gone wrong. So this all just kind of went perfectly in this way. So I don't know. I think that maybe it's a bit of a jaded perspective. I do like the show. I think overall I've really enjoyed it throughout. But this is also on me. I've also just been stopping and going with it. So that's why it's been a little difficult to kind of get back into it. And it's not holding my attention as much as I've wanted to. At least the last season hasn't. So, yeah, we'll see. That's kind of been on my backlog. And so I wanted to kind of give some honest thoughts on it, even though I haven't really watched it at all. But I sort of wanted to kind of explain why I maybe haven't gone back to it, considering how much of a hiatus I've had with it. Other things that I may want to catch up on before delving into kind of my overall thoughts and giving my overall thoughts on Better Call Saul. I think, yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to beating Tears of the Kingdom. I've been enjoying doing so right now. I'm finishing up the shrines. I've really enjoyed doing that. I've combined both, like, I've enjoyed just like searching for the shrines, using like the maps to kind of figure out where they are located, completing those like shrine quests, I guess you could say. I think the one thing that, and this is something that I'll probably touch upon when I give sort of my full thoughts once I finish the game, kind of at least like the main story and everything. I do, and this is mostly just for the fact that I've done most of the shrines. I do wish that some of these latter shrines had a bit more of a challenge to them. I wish that there were some more puzzle elements to them. Like, I've had a lot of fun exploring and discovering them, but I wish there was a bit more complexity with them. I wish that, like, a lot of the shrines that I found, I'd say majority of the remaining shrines have been blessings, which is essentially where it's either you complete a quest in which you bring a crystal over to the location of the shrine, or you kind of stumble across it in a cave. That's kind of like what that's usually the result that you get when you get like a blessing in the shrine. So I wish the shrines toward the end had like actual challenges within them, you know what I mean, where you had to actually complete the puzzle, use the physics to figure out how to open the doors and shit like that. I wish there was a little bit more to that than what we had, but it's okay, because like I think the 100 plus shrines that I've done, I'd say a lot of them had those puzzles that you needed to complete in order to complete the shrine itself. I just wish that I've kind of I wish there was a bit more than that, other than just kind of the blessings. It feels it's kind of funny to say, considering the scope of this game. I just wish there was like a bit more there, in terms of, I guess of a challenge, right? But still, it's been fun, I guess, re-exploring parts of Hyrule. There are some parts of Hyrule that I still haven't gotten to yet, and so I think that you kind of go through those when you discover the kind of the remaining shrines, you go into like more caves and that sort of thing. And so that's been fun. I very much enjoy spelunking in the caves as well as the depths. That's a lot of fun. Just exploring and doing all that stuff. So yeah, Tears of the Kingdom once again. And I'm looking forward to completing the game pretty soon. Let's get into Better Call Saul. I think that when the show first started, I was kind of let me say when the show got first announced way back, back in 2012, 2013, I was a bit skeptical. I didn't feel there was a need to go back to the Breaking Bad universe. I felt that story within itself was so complete. I didn't feel there wasn't really anything additional that was needed to, further extend the stories or to further expand the universe. I thought that everything was so well contained that I think adding on to it felt a bit, superfluous, was just unnecessary. So I was kind of skeptical of it. I understood that the writers, Peter Gould especially, was kind of taking the helm. But there was still some uncertainty there, and I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't start watching the show until a little later, until like after the first couple of seasons had aired. I started really catching up. I think it was, or maybe it was like season 2 when I started watching it weekly, or I tried to watch it weekly, and then I kind of stopped because I wasn't able to watch it on time. But it was probably like first 2 seasons, and before I started really delving into it. I had kind of my reservations because I think I was maybe a bit jaded, and I still kind of am, in regards to how certain properties are handled. You can look at things, obviously the larger franchises like, Star Wars and Marvel and stuff. I think it's become so bloated to the sense where I honestly have very little interest in watching anything new from them, even like the newer stuff, because I've heard good things about things like, the third Guardians movie, or in the case of Star Wars, I've heard good things about Mandalorian, and then that other show, I forgot which one that was called, the one that's like the prequel to Rogue One. I've heard good things, but I just have no interest, because it just feels it's too much shit to really get into. I found that I've really enjoyed self-contained stories, so I've like, I don't read as much as I used to, but when I do read, I like reading stories that, books that are it's just one story and then it's done. I don't really like, or I've struggled very much to get into series, just because there's just so much, and I don't know if I can make the time for sure. It's just, I don't know if I have the patience to go through these, like, fantasy series where each book is over 500 pages and stuff like that. I very much prefer, right now, as of now, maybe my tastes will change over time, where I've grown to, maybe I just don't want to watch anything anymore or play any video games, but I've just struggled to get into those kinds of things. So I like books that are like 300 pages or less, that focus on maybe like a single character, or it's just like a single story, and once it's finished. You're brought into this world. You get to know some of the characters and some of the world, and that's kind of it. and then you're like, okay, that was a really cool story. Or maybe it was a book that I didn't really enjoy, and I was like, okay, there's some things that I enjoyed. Some of the characters were compelling, but overall, I felt the story felt kind of flat at the end, right? And so it's with like things where you really enjoy certain things. There are exceptions for me, obviously. Like, Xenoblade, I don't give a fuck. Like, they can keep working. They can keep doing whatever they want with that story. I'll still kind of love it regardless. But other things, I just don't really want. It's just too much for me to handle. You know what I mean? This is all kind of long-winded, I know. But it's just for me to say, I felt that Breaking Bad ended on like a perfect note. I felt there was no really any strong reason to revisit that world, because I just felt that everything ended on a very strong note. But I was really happy to kind of see that, they weren't really like, it wasn't like, of course there was some fan servicey stuff here and there. Of course, like that's kind of expected, and I think it's cool. But that wasn't the focus, though. It wasn't like, oh, check out all, it wasn't like every episode there was like, you remember Walter White? Like, that was not, that was never really the case. I think in the last season they sort of made a much stronger connection to Breaking Bad, but up until that point there was really not a lot. And you could argue like Gus and Mike and these characters that also, are notable characters in Breaking Bad are also there, but they serve a different purpose. They are, they are the same characters in the sense, but their roles and even their kind of personalities are a bit different. They are different because they are technically younger. This takes place. Better Call Saul takes place 4 years before the events of Breaking Bad. So, there's maybe some inexperience there. There's a lot for them to kind of discover about themselves, maybe. So that kind of, those things exist for sure. I just think that the way the writers handled it was like respectful. I felt that it did not. They didn't look down on the audience and was like, hey, dummy, like, this is this character was, they don't like spell it out right, like, oh, this character is good or this character is bad. No, it's a very detailed case study, really, of Saul Goodman or Jimmy McGill, right? And his relationship to others, his relationship to the world and the people around him. I think the strongest one that kind of persists throughout the show is his relationship with his brother. I think that is a very strong theme that carries throughout the entire show, even to the end. And I felt that was incredibly well done. And it, if you are someone who loves Breaking Bad like I did, you learn to appreciate Saul's character more. In some cases, you learn to dislike his character a lot more. And I thought that entire dynamic was one of my favorite parts of the show. That and Jimmy's relationship with Kim. I think his relationship with his brother, Chuck, and his relationship with Kim were, I think, probably my favorite moments of the show. I thought those were really, well done, to put it simply. And you really bought into those relationships, their dynamics. You can see where they're coming from. Just the kind of in the case with Chuck, you could really tell just how strained that relationship is. There's just some tension there that you can't really, especially in the beginning, in the very first season, there's like, you're like, okay, they seem like they're on good terms, but it doesn't seem like, not everything is right. Like this, there's just something kind of off about their relationship. I don't know why. And then, like, at the end of the season, you kind of like, okay, so this is not, this is clearly not a stable, healthy, loving relationship between family members, right? And that just kind of continues forward for the rest of the show, and it's something that the writers call back to, which I loved in the very last episode, and it's like, yeah, that it just kind of makes a lot of sense, starting from the very beginning to the end. I can't really comment this enough, but I just want to continue to praise like the acting of this show, especially from Rhea Seehorn. I thought her acting was incredible. Bob Odenkirk was, of course, he killed it. Like, it was just, when I was watching the last like few episodes, I was thinking, like, this is like he's doing so much shit, man. Like, he's doing just so much, like, in terms of switching his character from, you know, his kind of persona as Saul, drawing back into Jimmy and being a much more vulnerable self, and then kind of extending that personality to someone else, which is Gene, who's kind of like, you know, his sort of the name he took on after, you know, Saul Goodman. So there's like 3 layers to it. You could kind of connect it to, like, I don't know, Freudian psychology or whatever the fuck, if you really want to go into that. But it's really just kind of like, you get these like multiple layers of this character who you see like kind of the main persona with Saul. I'm really getting into it. I'm really getting into some fucking Xenogears shit, but like, you kind of have the main persona with Saul, or excuse me, with Jimmy. You know, that's who he is. He has a brother. He has these kind of relationships, and he's you know, he's a very flawed person, but he's very human. And then you get Saul, the personality, who he kind of develops, just the lawyer, just the person who's always scheming for shit, who only really cares about his status and money and just cementing himself and not really caring at all about people too much. You know what I mean? He does things on the pretenses that he cares for people, right? He like advertises himself. He's like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, protect you and be your lawyer, but it's all in service of his, you know, of maintaining his current position. And then you get, you know, in the future, you get Gene, who's kind of this bitter and broken person who is really kind of like a fractured sort of Jimmy. Like, he is really just trying to survive, and just kind of like, he is completely reserving himself. He is not, you know, he's not really anybody. He's just kind of doing his thing, living, but not really. Surviving, I think, is like a better word to put it. And I thought just that dynamic and just that the contrast between all 3 of those characters was so interesting. You know what I mean? I could really keep going with this if I wanted to. I just thought, especially kind of in the last season, where all of these kinds of personalities were like really blended together, especially in the last like 4 episodes, 3-4 episodes. And it is really something, and a lot of that has to go to, you know, how well Bob Odenkirk acted throughout. He did really an incredible job bringing the character to life. I will say, I'll give some minor criticisms, because overall I love the show. If you couldn't tell, I love the show dearly. I think it's because it's one of my favorites now. I would say, like, there are some moments in it where it felt a little maybe unnecessary, and I think some of that related to, I guess, Mike and Gus's kind of storylines. You get more of an in-depth look at their characters, which I thought was good, and I thought that was cool to see, because then I think when I do revisit Breaking Bad, I don't know if I'm going to do like a full rewatch by any means, but, you know, if I kind of just like, I don't know, watch videos, or, you know, maybe I'll watch like an episode or something like that, or rewatch certain scenes. But you get more depth with them, and I appreciate that. I think that's really cool. I just felt that there were some moments in the show that I felt was like, okay, this is kind of repeating information that we already received in a prior episode, and just sort of like putting a different spin on it, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, we understand Gus's kind of motivation and where his kind of where his intentions sort of lie, and we get a lot of instances of, you know, moments with him, with certain characters, with his, you know, guess like his enemies and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, I understand where he's coming from. I thought that was fairly clear. And I thought that some moments were just sort of repeats and didn't necessarily add anything to his character, or didn't really add to, I guess, like the overall plot. I think another sort of minor criticism that I have, another one that I have is, I guess if it relating to the, I guess kind of like the, what is it? The Mike and Gus kind of storylines. I think that certain moments held less tension because of what you were sort of expecting going into Breaking Bad, right? You already kind of knew the fate of these characters going forward, so it's like, okay, well, cool, but I already sort of know what the outcome is. But yeah, so those are kind of my minor sort of complaints or minor criticisms that I have of the show. I thought everything related to Saul, Jimmy, Kim, Chuck, Howard, all of the kind of the core members of you know surrounding Jimmy himself, I thought all of that was incredibly well done, and that was sort of really my favorite part, was whenever Jimmy and Kim had like a conversation or argument, I was glued. I was in it, dude. I believed in their relationship. I believed everything that they were discussing. Their characters were very much, they were substantial. I felt that. I felt what they were doing. The kind of the games that they were playing with, themselves, they're playing certain roles. You were like, yeah, I understand where they're coming from. I understand what their intentions are. I get it. You know what I mean? And I think that's much more clear once the series ends and you kind of look back and you really start to kind of delve deeper into each of the characters, why it is that they turned out the way they did, and you're like, it makes a lot of sense, and it's really evident, and it's really due to the writing and everything. So yeah, there are so many things I could say about the show. There are so many things that I kind of want to talk about, but it's going to be just dealing with spoilers, so I don't know if I'll delve into that today or really anytime soon, but this is one of the best shows that I've ever seen, and regardless of, I think this is a very, this is kind of obvious, but it's a companion piece to Breaking Bad. It's I think the way you should view it is, I think you should watch Breaking Bad first and then watch Better Call Saul. But the show stands on its own as well. I think that it does a very good job at characterizing, or I guess putting emphasis on its characters and everything like that. I don't know if you necessarily need to see Breaking Bad, but I think you should. I think it's recommended to watch it first before watching Better Call Saul. And it's just such a it's so good. It's so well done. Just all of the pieces. There's so many so many other things to appreciate. The cinematography, I think the use of music is complements, whatever scene is going on. It's all just composed and done in such a way that it elevates everything. So yeah, one of my favorite shows now. I think that it ended on a very strong note. Yeah, and I'm very happy with how things turned out. So yeah, that was kind of the main thing that I wanted to sort of catch up on. Now that sort of it's again still fresh in my memory after I finished the show. And yeah, I will catch up with you all later this weekend. Alright, it is now Sunday, July 9th, 2023. Enjoying, once again, a nice little weekend. Very, very quiet. It's been nice. It's been good to just kind of relax, and I really, today in particular, I really had no, I don't know, sometimes I go through days or periods where there's just kind of like a lingering thing at the back of my mind where it's like I feel like I'm missing something and I'm not really enjoying myself fully, or if I'm not able to really fully like relax and shit. But today was like a good day. Today it's been a good day so far, and I feel very, I don't know, it's just I don't really have a whole lot. I'm not at unease with anything. I don't feel pressure to do shit. I just kind of am like, I'm just mellowed out, and it's nice. I feel like last weekend was pretty good. But 4th of July, for some reason, I think it was just because of the fact that it was like in between two work days, because it was on a Tuesday that we had a holiday, and I mentioned that like I was thinking of maybe taking the Monday off, but it was just sort of like a weird kind of period where it was like I don't really know if it was such a weird moment to have like a holiday, I felt like I couldn't really like relax in that sense, so it still felt like I was like kind of on a clock and I needed to work in some way. I don't know, it was just sort of a strange placement of that holiday, and the fact that we weren't able to get the Monday off was kind of annoying, but it is what it is. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, it's been a really solid weekend. I very much enjoyed myself. I finished up Tears of the Kingdom. I'm going to get into that in a little bit, because I have quite a lot to discuss after my completion of it. So I'll talk a bit about some other things first. So I've been looking, outside of, kind of the main game that I focus on. So, whether it's like a large RPG or, most recently Tears of the Kingdom, I usually supplement that by playing other games. And that's, over the last couple of years, that's been like Rocket League, that's been Slay the Spire, that's been, once in a while Fortnite, not as much recently. But, other games that are multiplayer, easy kind of in and out, or like Smash Bros, where I can just, play a couple of quick matches, and then I don't really gotta, I don't gotta invest a whole lot of time and energy into it, and I'm just sort of there, and then it's all good. So I've been kind of trying to find another game that sort of fits that sort of feeling, in the sense where I don't have to, I'm not emotionally invested in like a story or characters, where it's very much, it's all gameplay. It's all gameplay, and you're just sort of in it, and you don't really have to think about anything else. And I think I found the game. So I've heard about Risk of Rain 2 for a minute now. I didn't really know too much about it. I've just heard that it was like a sort of a roguelike shooter game, and that seemed pretty intriguing. but I never really delved too much into it. But then I watched a few videos talking about just the creator's appreciation for the game, and just the how immersive the gameplay is, and I was like, yeah, fuck it, why not? It was only like $25 on the eShop for my Switch. I know that it's primarily focused on a PC gaming experience because of the modded content and everything like that, but I only have a Switch, so that's the version that I got. And so far it's been a lot of fun. It's the multiplayer experience for the Switch version is definitely a little lacking. I tried to do a multiplayer kind of co-op mode earlier this morning just to kind of test it out, and it ran for the first 5 minutes and then there was like a disconnection. So it's not super, I think it's not that well supported as I wish it was. I think that, again, it's much more of a focus for the PC version, which I understand because it allows for more gaming variety and all that. I just wish there was a bit more of an emphasis, and it doesn't seem that there's cross-platform, which kind of sucks. So that's most likely a reason why I'm not getting as many like hits I wasn't able to really find like a lobby, you know what I mean? But other than that, the single player experience is great. I think it's really up my alley in terms of what I want. I've gushed about Slay the Spire and how that game is really just kind of my cup of tea in terms of something where I really don't have to think about too much, where I can just jump in and there's like a daily challenge thing where it kind of handpicks like which character you can use and certain relics and abilities that you're sort of locked into for a particular run, and with those limitations you have to try your best to complete it. And I like that because, again, it doesn't expect too much out from you. It's just like you gotta just play within these rules and then see how far you can get. And it's sort of that's sort of the case with a lot of rogue-like games where you have your limitations. From the very beginning, you have your base character stats and certain abilities and whatnot, and then with that you have to you grow, you develop certain skills, you garner passive skills mostly, which I think is really great. It's not like you get on, I mean, you do have sort of an additional skill slot, but it's just for one skill only. All the other stats or the other abilities are all passive, and they are just kind of like stacked onto each other, or I guess they're called passive or like soft skills. They're all added on your kind of base character, which I think is really cool, and it doesn't require you to really play any. It doesn't require you to necessarily change your style of gameplay with the character that you're using. You just have to get better with it. The very first time I started playing it, which was like earlier, I think it was like on Friday or something when I downloaded the game, I did not even realize, and this is just all on me, I didn't even realize that there was a trigger button, so I was only using the kind of the, I guess, quote unquote special abilities of the characters, which both had a cooldown, and so I was terrible at it. I was like so bad at it, because I was not using the trigger button, which is essentially what you can just kind of use that endlessly. There's no cooldown for that. I was only using, like the two special skill slots, and I was like terrible. I was like, dude, this shit is so fucking hard, dude. Like, why is this so hard? And then I was like, I never even thought to use like the right trigger. You know what I mean? Like, I always just used I was just using like the left bumper, which is for one skill, and I was using the what was it? The right bumper. And it was just like, okay, this is a struggle, dude. I'm lasting like 5 minutes for every run that I have. And then like after a while I finally figured out there was a right trigger just by pressing it. I was like, I had such a like a facepalm moment. I'm like, Jesus, dude. It took me this long. I've been playing this for like 2 hours and I didn't realize, I didn't even think about that. And the controls like scheme was like right at the bottom right of the screen, and I never even like registered that. I thought that was so funny. So once I learned how to actually play the game, it became really a lot more enjoyable, and I'm kind of in it now. Each run, I mean, it depends on how well you do, and some of the RNG elements of like what passive abilities that you acquire during the run and stuff, but there is some skill based gaming there as well, like in terms of how well you maneuver and how well you dodge and weave. You're just constantly moving in this game, which is crazy. It's also a lot, I would say it is quite a lot of stimuli, especially once there are just multiple enemies on screen, multiple like swarms of enemies on screen. It becomes quite a lot. So it is really fun, and it's also pretty, like, it can get pretty stressful at times. I don't know, it's really hard for me to say if I would like recommend this to anyone, because it's a pretty, it's like a, what would you call it? It is kind of like a light gun rail shooter plus third person shooter plus roguelite survival. It's a combination of a bunch of games, you know what I mean? I feel like, and this is kind of a weird example to make a comparison to. You could make it kind of a comparison to like COD Zombies or something like that. You know, where you're just surviving swarms and swarms of enemies. I don't know exactly what type of game style that is, but like just like a survival mode, a PvE, you know, person versus environment kind of thing. But it's just kind of different in that sense. I don't know. It's not. It feels just like a mixture of a bunch of different games. And it's I don't know, it just blends really well together. I think the biggest thing is the fact that those skills that you acquire are passive, and they just kind of like, you can like stack them. So one of my favorite abilities that I've received is like the ability for your attacks to go quicker. Like I think for the particular character that I've been using, which is Commando, which I know is like the very first, you know, character that everyone uses, is like just the fact that their attack speed increases and you can just kill enemies a lot quicker. And I think that sort of aids in the benefit of that certain play style. I have not tried any of the other characters yet. I just unlocked one of them. So now I have 3 characters that I can use, but I've just been having fun learning Commando and trying to figure that out. I think there's going to be a lot of, there's just a lot of reason to come back to this game, with, you know, multiple characters, the ability to unlock those characters, and the fact that it feels like it's going to be very difficult to actually complete the game, you know, go through all the levels. I don't really know how many stages there are. I haven't really looked into that, but I'm assuming that it's not going to be easy, because it's definitely hasn't been easy for me, but I've really enjoyed the challenge so far. And it's been super enjoyable playing it, and I think it's going to be like a good sort of like, I don't know, it's possible that I might just be investing all of my time, you know, playing games into this particular one for the time being, just because I've been enjoying it so much. But even if I want to maybe take a break from, you know, something from like an RPG, more, you know, story heavy, story focused game, I think this might be a good kind of substitute slash supplement for that. And I've been really enjoying it so far. It's fun. I don't have like a ton of like roguelike game experience aside from Slay the Spire. And again, Hades is another one that I've been wanting to get into, but I don't know how many of these kinds of games I really want to juggle. So maybe that might be a game further down the line if I ever, want to try that out and want to see kind of a different style of roguelike, in that sense. So, but Risk of Rain 2, very fun game so far. And I'm excited to kind of see how it develops as I further unlock the game, further unlock characters, and how far I'm able to progress with concurrent builds and whatnot. So I'm excited to see kind of how that goes. But I've been really enjoying it so far. It's been a minute. I wanted to touch upon some music stuff since it's been quite a while since I've really talked about any music. I haven't really listened super extensively or really honed in on any specific albums or artists recently, just because I feel like there hasn't been a ton of releases that I've been really interested in. But I'll touch upon a couple of songs that I've been kind of listening to. So Mick Jenkins dropped a new song, and it is called, if it pops up on my Spotify, it is called Smoke Break Dance with JID. So you got two of my favorite artists on a track. Perfect. It's great. I love the jazz kind of influence. I really like the tone and the atmosphere that the song brings. And Mick Jenkins, he went on a live stream after the release of the song, and I caught up on that a little bit. He was talking a bit kind of about the album release that he's sort of anticipating later this year, which I'm looking forward to. I forgot if he set a release date specifically, but it sounds like there's going to be an album later this year, so I'm excited for that. It's been a minute since he's released an album or like a project of any kind. He touched upon this as well. He's been doing quite a lot of features, and I've caught up on some of those, and they've been good. I like kind of what he brings to the table as a featured artist. But I think the main thing is just looking forward to seeing him on his own records. I think he's one of my favorite artists just because his like lyricism and all that. I think that's like a common through line with a lot of the artists that I enjoy and that I've listened to over time. And most of the things he's put out has been really good I've thoroughly enjoyed. And this song kind of sets up a certain mood. I think this is like the first single off the album. I'm thinking. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think that I've just been wanting to hear some new stuff from him, so I'm glad to hear that he's coming out with some new stuff later down the line. And I'm trying to just kind of a bit of a drought of some sense or a dry spell of music for me. I just haven't really latched on to anything super recently. I've been listening to songs here and there. I've been more kind of like hopping around on certain like playlists and radios and whatnot, but not any specific albums by artists. So hopefully that's something I'm looking forward to later this year when that comes out, so that can kind of add on to this year, because like I just feel there's just really hasn't been like I'm trying to think of an album that came out this year in particular where I've really like listened to it and then like gone into it. I don't know, it's been a minute. So and hopefully other albums come out that I might be kind of like intrigued by. So, Earth King also dropped a song called Bobby Boucher. I've been listening to this quite a lot. I've listened to this probably like 10 times already. It's just super catchy. It's just in and out. It's an earworm. It's really good. It's fun. That I don't really have that much to say about this one, but it's good. I really like the sound of it. I hope that it kind of like carries into the album. I kind of like, I like sort of the. I know it's sort of it's probably. They're probably so annoyed of hearing this comparison, but you can hear sort of like the Outcast sort of like influence a little bit with sort of the melodic style of the chorus and everything. But I really enjoyed it, and it's fun. It's a fun song. So it'll probably be in my rotation for the coming future. So yeah, those are some of the songs that I wanted to kind of catch up on. Again, I really want to listen to some new stuff, but there just hasn't been anything that's really like hooked me or brought my attention. I actually just watched the video today. It was talking about how this year there really hasn't been any like hit songs or anything like that this year, and I don't really listen to pop music that much, but I think it's interesting how that kind of reflects my current like musical, like, I don't know, my musical sort of, not tastes, but where I'm currently at in terms of what I'm listening to. Like, there's just like nothing on the like top Hot 100s or anything, and right now there really has been nothing that's really like that I've really latched on to in terms of music. So yeah, I don't know, it's funny how the charts have also kind of reflect where I currently am. So again, yeah, I'm hoping that there's something that comes out that sort of draws my interests, or maybe I need to really kind of seek that out myself. Let's get into Tears of the Kingdom. I want to talk about kind of my final impressions on the game, because I beat it last night, and how I sort of felt of it as a whole and my experience so far. Like, it's nothing I say here will shock anyone. Like, it's just going to be a similar consensus to what I've held so far as I've played from beginning to, middle to right, to the end right now. Nothing's really changed all that much. I think it's really, my feelings toward it have sort of remained the same throughout. But it's an incredible game. It's become one of my favorite games. It has had some of my favorite experiences so far in gaming that I can really think of. There's just so many moments that I can point back to, thinking like, wow, that was this fucking fantastic moment. Like, holy shit, that was so cool. I'm like, oh shit, that was dope. I have so many of those moments that I can kind of look back on. It's just so well done. Everything is really good. Again, like, despite the story having its flaws and not being super interesting or super in depth, it's kind of expected with Zelda. Like, I've said this already a bunch of times, but I don't really anticipate going into a Zelda game where the story is going to be the full focus or the main focus of the game. You know what I mean? It's sort of the, it's there to incentivize and motivate the players to continue forward with the journey, but not necessarily, it's not like the main draw. You know what I mean? Maybe for some people it is, and that's totally fine. But it just doesn't have that hold on me as much as like the other aspects of it. I think that of course I've touched upon this before, but I think the gameplay and just like the levels to how you can approach the game, and just the creativity that you can really you can kind of display while playing the game is really like a huge draw for sure. Like there are still so many things with the game where I haven't experimented with certain like mechanics and whatnot. Once I beat the game, I finally was able to go onto like Reddit and stuff and see the crazy shit that people have been pulling off, and it's just been great to see that. I felt that like when I play the game, like I sort of, or when I first started playing the game, I kind of approached it in a similar way that I did to Breath of the Wild. But as kind of things unveiled, and once you started to get those abilities, like I started to kind of like change up my play style, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna see how this works out, and then I'll maybe like switch back. Like at the very beginning, I was trying my best to complete shrines and do certain do certain things within the game without using the paraglider, and then I eventually like found out like, oh, I actually cannot complete this shrine without the paraglider, so I eventually had to go get it. But I don't know, it was just fun kind of challenging myself to do those kinds of things. And it's great that the game allows you to do that. There's so many ways to play the game. Of course, there's people that speed running the game, trying to beat it as quickly as possible. There's people that I saw like a post on Reddit of someone who was like literally like walking every single like square inch of Hyrule, and I was like, that's insane, that's ridiculous, but you do you, man. And so I don't know, it's just, and there's people that are just like they're just building shit. They're just building Gundams and other crazy ass contraptions and spending hours doing that. So I don't know, I think it's awesome that there's just so much variety to how people can kind of approach playing the game. I'm trying to figure out like the best way to kind of provide my thoughts, because a lot of it is just going to be like kind of praise and everything like that. I'll start off with, let's start off with like a comparison to Breath of the Wild. So it is very much a Breath of the Wild sequel. Just the the open world nature, the kind of the way the certain objectives are like set up. It's all kind of in that same vein. I think it's just like the additional depth, the literal depth that the game provides in terms of the map, the scope of the game, the enemy types, all of that. I think it's just sort of an elevation of what we had in Breath of the Wild, and I think that's something to kind of commend. It's like this game gives me the same feelings it did when I first played through Breath of the Wild, and just discovering things, just like the novelty of everything, stumbling across like certain enemy types. I'm like, well, what the fuck is that? I can't believe that's a thing in this game, you know what I mean? And discovering the depths for the first time, and the fact that there's a whole another Hyrule underground. It's just like it's all like incredible. Just experiencing those things for the first time. So kind of the big thing that Tears of the Kingdom kind of carries forward from Breath of the Wild is sort of that novelty factor, the novelty of exploring everything and discovering things for the first time. I think that's huge, and that left like quite an impression on me when in those first like 30-40 hours or so. What kind of kept me engaged was going forward and trying to sort of piecing together the story, even if it isn't the most interesting in that sense, or the most like expansive, but really trying to like figure out like what is going on, doing certain side quests that also sort of tie into the main story as well. Those are things that I felt that were things that really kept me in the game and kept me going. Also just the continued exploration of the world, and it was really satisfying. And I didn't really do this in Breath of the Wild, but I guess for Breath of the Wild there was only one map, so I guess mapping it all out was really relatively easy because you just had to do the towers. but I think doing it in Tears of the Kingdom was really satisfying. Completing all 3 layers, especially the depths, I felt that was a really cool accomplishment. And then also doing all of the shrines, I felt it was a really satisfying moment when I completed all of them, because you get like a pretty nice, you get a nice little kind of reward at the end of that. So I thought that was really well worth it, and it felt like this felt right to do before beating the game itself. Again, like, I am someone who has a bit of a difficult time when it comes to doing like post game stuff. Once I beat the main story, it's a little hard for me to get invested in doing all the other stuff. So I was really happy that I did, kind of the main objectives of doing all of the shrines and completing the map, and some of that stuff. I felt that was really sort of complimentary in me finishing up the game, and I really enjoyed my time with it. I think I want to touch upon, before we get into kind of the overall, I guess, like, once I kind of beat the game and sort of how I felt after I completed the game, I'm going to touch upon like a couple additional like criticisms I have. So I think the combat is a lot of fun. I think when it comes to the UI and like the menuing, it can get a little frustrating, like, especially when you're kind of like fusing stuff to your arrow. Like, it sort of pauses the game when you want to fuse things to arrows, like every time that you need to do it. And I felt that it kind of sort of like stopped the flow of the game a little bit, and I kind of found myself like wanting to just sort of in real time defeat the enemies instead of like maybe going into my menu, or like, if I'm going into bullet time and trying to shoot people with like an arrow and shit like that, and like, fusing a bomb to my arrow, that sort of thing. Or if I'm trying to throw an item, like, that also goes into like a pause menu, right? So I think a lot of that, it's a little frustrating to deal with, especially like towards like the end of the game as well. I thought that was like a little, I won't like get into like the specifics of it, but it was a little kind of like cumbersome to deal with that, especially when you're dealing with like swarms of enemies and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted, I wanted a bit more of like a stricter kind of system with the combat. But again, I understand the want to kind of have it be super open-ended and like creative and shit like that, where you don't have to like where you don't really have to like, it gives the player the option to do what they want. If someone wants a bit more of like an easier gameplay style, they can just kind of they can use like a puff shroom or certain other items that have elemental status effects, right? I think those are kind of helpful in that sense. But it did sort of kind of disrupt the flow of the combat in a sense, which I didn't really feel that way when playing Breath of the Wild, just because you don't have those like fuse abilities and whatnot. But I think just kind of like the constant pausing could be a bit much, and it could kind of get in the way of enjoying the game overall. But other than that, I don't really have too many complaints. It is kind of what it is with this game. I think you're just sort of like building upon a lot of things, and really just sort of trying your best to like be creative with what they give you. And yeah, so that's sort of my kind of minor critique with Tears of the Kingdom's combat. I'll say it again. I think the story, the main thing was just sort of the kind of the repetitive nature of the story. It sort of was similar in line to how they set up like the Divine Beast kind of storyline in Breath of the Wild. It was not as intriguing or as interesting as I hoped it could be. But yeah, I sort of really, I already touched upon that a little bit, just sort of the, you essentially saw the same cutscene like 4 times, and I thought that was kind of ridiculous. Like, it was like, you could have shown, like, something a little different, like, provide a little bit more variety in terms of, that, instead of just, like, literally doing the same thing verbatim, aside from whoever, other than the character who was speaking those lines of dialogue, you know what I mean? So I thought it was kind of funny. Like, the third time I saw it, I was just kind of laughing, and I was just like tuning out that entire cutscene in a moment. I was just like, this is just sort of this is a little ridiculous. I wish they put a little bit more effort into that. So that's kind of my criticism with the story. But now that I've kind of completed the game and I sort of got the quote-unquote true ending of the game, I felt that it all wrapped up in a very satisfying manner. I liked Zelda's kind of like, I liked her character in this game. I felt that she had a lot of agency. I felt that she felt really prominent in the story. Like, she felt very much like a focal point. Like, sometimes when you play a Zelda game, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, I love Twilight Princess. But Zelda herself is not really as important of a character. She's not really kind of the game doesn't really revolve around her specifically, which is fine. It doesn't always have to be that way. But in this case, like, her story is very much the story, right? Like Tears of the Kingdom, it's like kind of relating to her a little bit without getting into specifics. Like, it is sort of relating to her and what she goes through. And there's a particular moment where I was like, oh, I actually feel kind of like affected by this moment and what she kind of goes through. And you really sort of feel that. You're like, okay, this is pretty well done. And I think that the conclusion of the game was great. I thought it was just like you had this kind of hype battle, and it just, all of it just kind of like building up, and then the ending is it just feels very satisfactory, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm satisfied with how they ended this game. I think that's one of the bigger improvements that they made from Breath of the Wild. I think the Breath of the Wild ending was sort of lackluster. I mean, that story wasn't super great either, but I felt that they did a really good job with this, and all of the moments kind of leading up to that point was really well done. All the kind of end game stuff I thought was dope. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff going on. A lot of there was like additional like puzzles and shit that you had to kind of complete before you could kind of get the full ending of the game, or the true ending of the game. And I thought that was all that stuff was really cool, and just kind of helped elevate the main storyline. So yeah, how much else can I really say? I think the biggest plus, or the biggest thing that I can draw out from this game, is like the exploration. That was a big thing with Breath of the Wild as well, and this is just sort of like 2 or 3 times the size of that. Just the exploration. There are still things that I have yet to explore in this game. I don't know if I'm gonna go back to do those things soon. I still have a ton of side quests remaining, but I don't know. I feel, and this is not me feeling burnt out from the game or feeling like, oh, I'm sick of this game. It's more like, at this point, I feel very thoroughly fulfilled with this game. I think I've gotten what I've really wanted out of it. It's felt like a very complete experience, and that's a really good compliment that I can get out of it. It didn't overstay its welcome. It didn't feel like it was I didn't feel like I was drawing out the experience. I felt that it was just so, everything just felt very complete, and I'm happy with where I'm at with it at this point. But I don't know. It's possible that I'll jump back in who knows, maybe even like today or tomorrow, maybe I'll jump back in to do some additional quests, just so I could say that I'm on the kind of the road to doing kind of like a completion of the game. I'm not going to do the Korok seeds. I'm never going to do all of the Korok seeds, but it is possible that I might try to do all of the side quests. I think that might be cool. There might be some things that I might be missing out from my experience if I don't complete those. So I might do that. We'll see. And I also like, with this game and then with like Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, I like that they let you know how many more items, or how many more, like, you know, how much of a quest, how many quests you have remaining before you've kind of like completed all of them. I kind of like that. I like that the game kind of provides that for you, because it kind of lets you know, like, okay, now I'm for sure done with all of these quests, or I've filled out the entire compendium with all the items. I like that it kind of provides a actual number, instead of you having to like look up guides and shit like that and trying to figure out, like, oh shit, am I missing something? You know what I mean? So I think that's pretty cool. I like that part. So yeah, again, it's possible that I might go back to try to complete those additional quests that I haven't, and do some remaining stuff, maybe, if there's, or try to build a Gundam, which I mentioned that I might do in the future. So there are still a lot of things left to do. It's just a matter of, like, do I want to do them now? Maybe not. Maybe I'm just gonna hold off on that, because I've sort of had my fill with it. But it's been a really great experience. It's been a really fun couple of months that I've had with this game. I'm happy with how kind of things turned out, I guess. The wait was worth it. What was it, 2017 when Breath of the Wild was released, so 7 years. It was worth it. I thought it was worth the wait. And I'm very happy with everything and how it turned out. And I am looking forward to jumping back into Persona 5 and maybe some other stuff. Continuing to play Risk of Rain 2, getting better at that. A lot of other gaming stuff on my plate to get to, that I'm looking forward to. So I will touch upon that in the next time. Most likely won't be recording next week, since I'll be out of town in the weekend and I'll be a little busy during the week. So most likely won't be recording anything this upcoming week, but I will, when I post, you'll see it. So yeah, that's going to be it for this week's episode. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.